There it is. It's official.
It's official. Welcome back, folks. Hey, Pete, why don't they use those on television, for God's sake?
I don't know. They should. I love it in movies and everything, but do you remember the days, John? We, obviously being brothers, but Jared doesn't know this, and most people don't know this, but we were out there with the cast of MASH, and we were out there with all these, watching everybody in Hollywood as they were doing their thing, and they all wanted to be around our father, world famous transplant surgeon. So it meant that he could drag us around with him. So we got a chance to see a lot of that, the little clicker and the whole deal.
It's always funny, Pete, whenever they do a cold opening, like on CNBC or whatever,
yeah,
the cold opening usually has some sort of a tuning signal first.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? They do it as if they're, some sort of, what would it be, like NPR or something, Pete?
Yeah.
Where it's not commercial television, but it's funny. All right, folks, welcome. We're already a minute deep into it, and we haven't got to the 1 minute macro.
That's okay.
Because we know how much you guys love macro. So today we're going to take a look at Eurozone inflation, which is running hot, another record, Pete, and even higher than our records. They're running at 10.7%. Ouch. And that's after fuel came down a lot for them, just as it did for us. But it's still nowhere near where it was a year ago.
No, it's incredible how that's been moving up, John. And I think on top of that, if you just look at the dollar, we've been talking about that for a while now. We looked at the 2s and the 10s. We still look at all of these different indicators for ourselves on the macro side of things, but we don't do it for very long, just like this segment. It's a 1 minute deal. So I'll tell you this, the dollar's up today. It's up about 1%. When the dollar goes up, the markets get hit, they go down. That's the way it works.
And to emphasize that, folks, if you take a look at the euro right now, the euro, Pete, is trading, I think, at 98 handle. So in other words, below parity with the dollar. And part of that, of course, is because of that hot inflation reading. I mean, the Brits are lucky, Pete, that they pulled away. Theirs is down too, but it's not down as much as the euro. Ouch. Right. All right. Pete, let's take a little look at one of your favorite segments and sectors, natural gas, because it's only up 36% in a week. And no, I didn't do the math wrong. It was $4.70, Pete, a week ago, 1 week ago. And now it's pushing $6.40 again for natural gas.
Yeah, John, it's interesting because the volatility of that specific thing that we're talking about, natural gas, has been absolutely extraordinary. I mean, if you think the volume or the volatility of the markets is wild, take a look at nat gas. In September, it was $9. It dropped all the way underneath $5. It was at $4.70. Here we are today. We got all the way up to about $6.40, John. So yeah, you want a little bit of volatility in your life, forget crude oil, go right to nat gas, because this is absolutely amazing. Crude's been in a pretty tight range, call it probably, let's say 85 to 88, something like that would be the range for a while now, it feels like. But I'll tell you what, nat gas, unbelievable. We've seen it above 10, we've seen it below 5, we've seen it in the 4s, and all of that happens in a very, very short period of time.
Yep. And when that happens, folks, it makes it all the more, I think a lot of it is driven by what we've already suggested, and that is if U.S. companies are getting 4 times as much money for the natural gas that we would otherwise flare off here, and instead they can liquefy it and send it over to Europe, and they can get 4 or 5 times the price, eventually that's going to lift our prices too. And solar is one of those areas, Pete. First Solar, I noticed, was moving on this as well today. So keep an eye on that. That's one of those money-losing solar stocks, but nonetheless, they're getting a lot closer to profitability, Pete.
Well, and John, I'll tell you what, and then we'll jump to the next one, but 145, that's a new high, a new 52-week high at least. And you look at where year-to-date, they started off the year at 84, they bottomed out around 65, and now here we are at 145. Amazing move for First Solar. Unbelievable.
Well, let's take a look at this one. A pretty amazing move here, Pete. LLAP. It's called Terran Orbital. So anything called orbital, you probably have a pretty good idea that they do something with satellites and a lot with defense. So Lockheed Martin decides, Pete, they're going to give them $100 million investment, and the stock only jumps, in the mid 35% range, like that.
What I'm amazed at is this, John. Why give them 100 million when the whole company's only 300 million? If I'm Lockheed Martin and I'm really going to be aggressive and want to attack this, go after them. They got free cash flow of 5 billion. I say that as a shareholder of Lockheed Martin. I love the company. It seems like they are always in front of things. I don't feel like they're ever behind. They're always in front. I love the company. It's done very, very well, John, for me and for you and for a lot of other folks out there that have been shareholders over time, but it continues to rocket to the upside. 300 million? I mean, honestly, just reach into your back pocket and grab the whole damn company.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, Pete. It must have something to do with a combination of, sort of like the Nikola thing, Pete, where the guys roll a truck down a hill and people think, ah! So maybe they just want to get their nose under the tent. And you know what they say, once the camel's nose goes under the tent, unless you slap it really hard, that camel's going to keep coming into the tent. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if you're right and they end up buying this thing. All right, Pete. Big election, big election down in Brazil. Bolsonaro loses, Lula wins. And as Lula, who's more or less a lefty, and Bolsonaro's on the right, boy, they were protesting like crazy because this was a tight election. But one of the immediate things that we saw, Pete, was PBR. That's Petrobras. And Petrobras got hurt right away because Lula said, and I quote, "Let's fight for zero deforestation." In other words, he's playing the environmental card, Pete. And people are worried then that maybe PBR goes right back down because obviously it hasn't been up here for very long.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right, John. And there's a little bit of fear out there. This is a stock that was up about 75%. They've got an unbelievable dividend yield. We all know that. And it seems crazy, but the stock has had a great year until now. And now you've got a little bit of a pullback because people are nervous about it. Understandably so. I would be nervous. I used to hold this stock. I don't anymore, but I'd probably be nervous just because of the rhetoric. And potentially, John, it really could bring down this company. We'll see how it all plays out. But I'd love to see in the options world. I can tell you in the stock world, it's traded over 60 million shares already today, and an average day is about 33 million. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. A lot of activity and a lot of people hitting the doors and running out right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy this one again, Pete. I do have some call spreads, but I wouldn't make a fresh buy until it breaks 12 and goes down into the 11s, because this was a single-digit stock. We saw it, and knock on wood, we were able to ride it from, $8 or $9 up to 16, Pete. So it was a double in a year. But now it's trading down hard. It was just 16 in the middle of October. And now here it is, in the mid 12s. All right. Well, Pete, what about this one? Win. They get sort of a double hit here. They get the China basically saying, you know what, we're going to start issuing electronic permits to let people travel again. Imagine that, Pete. And one of the areas where they want to go, of course, is Macau. And that's where Win stands to make a lot of money. And the other side really is our mutual friend, Tillman Fertitta. The guy who's been out there buying the Houston Rockets and owns almost every steakhouse in America. He owns Mastro's, he owns Morton's, he owns Bubba Gump Shrimp. I know that's not a steakhouse, but wow. Win gets 2 bits of good news today, and the stock's up over 11%.
Yeah, this one, I'm fortunate to be in it, John, but I'm not in it any better or worse than it is right now. It's virtually right where I initially had bought some a while ago. And I thought we were getting close to the bottom. We weren't, because it went a little bit lower, but I wasn't overly worried about it. Sooner or later, and I don't know when, we're going to have Macau back in business. But for now, it's been that up and down, and everybody's been waiting for it, John. And certainly that's been something. But this is, I think, a big statement. And this is a gentleman who knows a heck of a lot about it through the Golden Nugget and others. He knows a lot about what's going on in the industry itself. I think he's made this this position, this 6+% position, made it pretty vocal, and I think he's actually wondering whether or not he's going to make it a little bit bigger, John, or maybe does he want to actually control win at some point in time and oust who's at the top right now. We'll see. It'll be interesting because he's an aggressive guy, and I wouldn't put it past him to say, you know what, I'm going to take over, and this is the way we need to run the Wynn Casino.
Well, he could either partner up with Elaine Wynn, Pete. That's Steve Wynn's divorced wife, who has a slightly bigger position than him. He's number 2, but we'll have to keep our eye on it and see exactly how that plays. All right, Jared, are we going to show them a little bit about Miami again? All right, folks, check out marketrebellion.com/Miami. Jared's going to roll a little intro for you about what goes on for 25 lucky people that can join us in Miami December 8th through 10th.
Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. First up, this December in Miami. Level up your trading with help from Pete Najarian, AJ Monte, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Miami is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention. So act now. Tickets are going fast.
All right, folks, that kind of gave you a little preview. It's a fabulous time if you're somebody who wants to take your trading to the next level, whether it's from beginner to intermediate or whether it's from intermediate to advanced or just advanced, and you want to just have fun and talk about trades. Talk about what's going to be happening in 2023. Set yourself up for it. Come on down to Miami, December 8th through the 10th. You get to do a little Art Baseling, I guess, too. And it's a fabulous time. We all love meeting all of you, and it's very intimate because it's only 25 of you. Shoot, we practically have 25 of us, Pete, down there. we have about 8 or 10 of us down there, so it's almost the kind of ratio that you'd see at a really, really private school. But it's a fabulous time. Go to marketrebellion.com/Miami to learn more. All right, I've got the XLP, Pete, for my unusual activity. They bought 30,000 of the March 66 puts. So what does that mean? Puts are the right to sell something. In this case, the XLP, which is the consumer discretionary or consumer staples. I'm sorry, consumer staples, not discretionary. Consumer staples. What really makes up a consumer staples? Well, basic materials, financial services, real estate, all of that kind of stuff. Do those sound like things that get hurt by higher interest rates? Yeah. So in other words, things that we're worried about, like Wednesday this week when we have Jerome Powell at the presser, they're going to move 75 basis points, Pete, but at the presser, he might really have to talk tough, even if he doesn't intend to move much tougher than he's moved so far. That's why I think the XLP is getting a little protective or straight out bearish bets.
Yeah, it makes sense, John. I've got one for you. I'll tell you what, I've been focused on energy for a very long period of time, since basically the day Joe Biden became the president of the United States, because of the fact that we knew the changes would happen quick. They did. We've watched the price of crude go up. It has, and it continues to go up. It has made this big pullback. And we were talking earlier that it's trading in the upper 80s, somewhere between 85 and call it 88. Well, John, these guys are cash machines right now, these guys being energy companies. Just to give you a little bit of insight, so I've got some unusual option activity in XOM. Now, we all know the crude was up to 120, right? Give or take 120s.
Yep.
We've pulled back, and here we are. Well, why would those stocks continue to rocket to the upside? Well, Maybe because they make money. To quote our friend Kevin, they like money, and they are money machines. How about this? 17 billion in free cash flow for ExxonMobil. Give you a little bit of an idea of how well they're doing. 112 billion in revenue. That gives you a little bit of an idea. So the stock was trading today about 110.40 all the way up to about 110.80. And then we had a buyer at that point in time of 5,400 of Friday's expiring November 4th, the 112 calls. Well, the stock went from the levels where they bought it, John, all the way up to a brand new fresh high, 112.90. It then pulled back a little bit, and it's been moving back up again now. It's back above 111. Gives you an idea that somebody out there thinks this stock could go a little bit higher. They're paying about $1.20 to about $1.40 for these calls, 5,400 of those 112s. Will it go through 112 again today? Certainly could. We'll keep an eye on it. I love this trade. I like the energy stocks. I already own Chevron, but I'll be owning calls in Exxon.
Yep, I like it as well, Pete. And that's one of them in my portfolio too, folks. So those two today, XLP to the downside because rates are probably going to the upside. And Pete has XOM, which is, only one of the largest energy companies in the world. Probably number two, Pete, behind Saudi Aramco.
Yeah.
So two pretty interesting picks. All right, Pete. Well, on the Sports Huddle yesterday, what were you guys talking about on your syndicated sports talk radio show?
Yep.
The Sunday Huddle.
Yeah, Odyssey does a great job, John. The Huddle was phenomenal. I love my partner, Dave, does a great job. We might have to bring him on here sometime. It'd be fun to have him along because he's a longtime sports broadcaster, was on TV, now he's on radio. He's now part of the Minnesota Wild as well. We're going to talk about the NFL. And what do we want to talk about? Defenses still matter, John, and it really does come down to defense. And we've already had a lot of people talking about the Graybeards comment, and now we're seeing a lot of other people talk about what's going on with the Graybeards in the NFL. A lot of those guys probably should have stepped away a little bit earlier because they're making themselves look a little bit silly at this point in time. Defenses do matter, though, in the NFL, John. And by the way, want to know who the number one defense is in the NFL right now for points against? Well, that'd be the Buffalo Bills. Everybody thinks it's all about offense. It's not all about offense. It's about defense. You know who has the best takeaway margin in the NFL? The only undefeated team left, the Philadelphia Eagles. Those guys are number one in takeaways, John. They've got 16 of them, 10 interceptions, 6 fumbles. Gives you a little bit of an idea of why defense really does matter. And by the way, when you have a good defense, that makes your offense a whole lot better as well. The top 3 offenses in the NFL, this is pretty easy: Buffalo, Kansas City, and Philadelphia. Sounds like teams that everybody thinks are going to go to the Super Bowl, right? Who has the top 3 points per game? Well, it's Kansas City, it's Buffalo, and it's Philadelphia. Same 3. Just amazing, isn't it? So when you piece this all together, defense does matter. It helps the offense. And that's one of the things that I think people are missing when they just focus on offense. Defense is still king, John, just like your days with the Bears and Buddy Ryan and all of that. What do you think right now about some of these defenses?
Well, I was impressed, Pete, actually by your Vikings because they actually decided to play a little defense yesterday. Now, they're not going to win any awards for lowest points, against as a defense because, quite frankly, they get beat from time to time. But some of their folks who have been banged up put in some nice performances yesterday. And, they got turnovers when they needed them yesterday, and they beat the Cardinals. That's not a bad Cardinal team. You got J.J. Watt down there with the Cardinals now. You got, a good quarterback. And I think when you're looking at the way the Vikings played, it was an impressive display for a change for a defense that doesn't usually impress very much.
Yeah. The only
what else
problem
you
I have,
got,
John,
Pete?
is that they give up a lot of yards. That's my one criticism. But in fairness to the Vikings, and I get a chance to watch them every single week, but in fairness to the Vikings, they had the turnovers, and turnovers mean something. And they mean a lot, actually. And the defense did it. It kept him in the game. And fortunately, the offense and Kirk Cousins, everybody hates Kirk Cousins, right? There's some clowns out there, on different networks talking about how bad he is. Let me tell you something. The guy seems to be doing pretty good. And oh, by the way, he's pretty athletic at 33. He had a nice 17-yard scamper for a touchdown yesterday as well. John, let's go to college football next.
Let's do it.
The best game of the year, and it might be the best game of the year, including after this game. But I think it's this weekend. Tennessee has to go to Georgia, and everybody's probably thinking, well, Georgia's going to dominate these guys. I know Tennessee is pretty daggone good. They're undefeated. They do have a great quarterback, John, in Hendon Hooker. He's only thrown 21 touchdowns with 1 interception this year, 71% completion. The kid is a total stud. He will be a great one in the NFL because he's a senior as well. But here's the one interesting part that nobody else has been talking about. Tennessee has actually played somebody. What do I mean by that? Well, they've got 5 games this year, John, where they played number 17 Pitt, number 20 Florida, number 25 LSU, number 3 Alabama, who they beat, and the number 19 Kentucky this weekend, who they beat the living tar out of, and they're averaging 49 points a game on offense. Not so bad. I think these guys are really ready, John. And by the way, Georgia, I love them. I think they deserve to be ranked where they are. They've had 1 game this year they played a ranked opponent. One. And that was the game 1 against Oregon. They whooped them up 49-3. If those two played today, the score would be a lot different, I can tell you that. But they've only had that 1 game, John, so I just kind of wonder. Georgia's good. They lost a lot of guys to the NFL, but they are really good. They recruit really well. Can they actually beat Tennessee? They'll be at home, but what do you think? What do you think is going to happen in that game?
Well, obviously, you go with the home team in this one, Pete. Georgia's number 1 until someone proves otherwise.
Yeah.
Tennessee could be that team. I mean, whenever I've watched these guys, I loved them, by the way, in the black uniforms, Pete, for Halloween, because, Tennessee, most of of course, wears orange. And that's usually orange and white, almost like Pete's dreamsicle team when he was down in Tampa.
Yeah.
But to see them in black, that was pretty stud, Pete, with the black helmets and the orange tee instead of the white helmets with the orange tee. That was a real butt whooping, as you say, against Kentucky. And that kid from Kentucky, the quarterback from Kentucky, is a high pick, Pete.
Yep.
So, that's no pushover, but they made it look like it was. So I got to say that I am also very interested in watching this game, and I'll be glued to it on the plane, Pete, because unfortunately I'll be on an airplane when this game's being played.
I hope you get reception right there, because every once in a while it gets a little bit off, but I hope you can, John. It'll make the flight that much shorter because it's going to be a great game, I think. I think it should be a shootout, by the way. Both of them are all about offense this year, less about defense. They're still damn good at defense, Georgia particularly, but it's really about offense. And Josh Heupel, I just got to mention, the Tennessee former quarterback at Oklahoma, the Tennessee coach. This guy, other than Brett Bielema, this guy's really doing something special. You talked about it last week. By the way, Bielema did beat Nebraska, so he continues to be an unbelievable force right now in the Big Ten. We'll see if they continue it this week as well. But there's some good coaches out there doing an amazing job, and teams that fired coaches and then hired these guys and said, you know what, get after it, and they're getting after it.
We might have to talk a little bit tomorrow, Pete, about Michigan State and Michigan, speaking of getting after it.
Yeah.
Because there were some players that didn't leave it all on the field. They left a little bit of it in the tunnel.
Yeah. Real classy. We'll definitely have to talk about that one.
All right. Folks, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always reach out to @Pete Najarian or @John Najarian on Twitter. I will be back with 3 p.m. later today, as well as being with the lovely Liz Clayman at just after 3 p.m. on the Fox Business Channel. So tune into Fox Biz, folks. I'll see you tomorrow with Pete at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.